Welcome to the 359. I'm Roger Chang.
I'm Joni Salzman.
The Facebook controversies continue to blow up. The social network is reportedly shutting down its Facebook research app, which paid volunteers, including teenagers, $20 a month for access to things like the web browsing history, private messages, and a lot more. Similar to this novel app that Apple banned a while back for violating its privacy rules. Basically, this was Facebook getting around that. And so we'll see how Apple reacts, because they're not really cool with companies getting around their terms and services.
No, and like their Apple is crucial to Facebook.
Yep.
It's interesting that Apple didn't go they banned this app.
Yep.
That was discovered this week. But they didn't go so far as to remove Facebook's ability to have these what are supposed to be inner corporation apps so you can do testing.
Right.
That's how Facebook sort of exploited a loophole, but they're not revoking that. They're just getting rid of this one app. So Facebook is so big too, they break the rules, and it's a little bit like just a slap on the wrist. It feels like.
But given all the issues, like why does Facebook even have this at this point? I mean, they've just continued to struggle balancing, our privacy with their need to have so much data, and given just all the terrible news that's been out over the last year, like why is this still a thing?
I think because it's so ingrained in their company and their business and their culture that it's sort of, and for a long time, the way that people understood this stuff was like, we understand you better, and that means we'll make our service even better for you.
Right.
And it's only been in like the last year or 2 years where people have realized, oh, that's insidious, actually. And I think the fact that they were banking on it not being insidious for forever, that now that people are like, wait a second, I don't like that. It's just so ingrained in how they operate that's why it keeps happening.
Especially when you're bringing in teenagers. That's like when you're bringing in minors. That's really.
I'm really curious what this like parental consent form was that people 13 to 17. Because if it's just like hand your phone to your parent and they'll check the little box, it's like, of course kids didn't do that.
Yeah.
Sick.
All right, so next up, Apple, as expected, posted disappointing fiscal first quarter results last night. But on top of that, they also forecasted a range of revenue for the next quarter, or this current quarter, that was also considered pretty disappointing, suggesting that iPhone sales have hit a wall, and we've already peaked.
Right.
We're past peak iPhone.
Yeah.
It was just interesting that just listening on the call, this hour-long call, CEO Tim Cook spent a lot of time tap dancing about like how great the products were when he's getting hammered on this point about like what's going on with sales. He's like, oh, well, the iPhone has like the best camera ever, blah blah blah. Like some of it was finally like 45 minutes into it, he finally acknowledged like, okay, price was a factor.
Did he?
He finally admitted it. He couched it heavily, He's like, there's Forex, the lack of phone subsidies, but ultimately selling a $1,000 phone is not a great strategy.
Yeah, I'm curious how much he tried to, because I missed the call last night, how much he tried to put it on like Chinese demand and all the.
Yeah, it's interesting. He did mention China. That definitely played a big part of it, but he spent a lot of time talking about Forex. I mean, he talked about like the value of the Turkish lira versus the dollar. I'm like, I can't believe we're talking about this on an Apple call right now.
Right.
So it was kind of weird. It was interesting to kind of watch them kind of backpedal. Obviously he's sort of like, we don't run our company in 90-day increments. We're all about the long term, which is what executives say when things are bad. Lastly, I just want to point to you our story on Tappy, the T-Mobile phone torture test robot that is at the center of the U.S. Justice Department's case against Huawei. It's a fascinating story about how Huawei employees were incentivized to try to steal first photos of Tappy, and then actually steal a part of them, actually made off with part, like the hand of Tappy, and ultimately gave it back, which is kind of weird too. But check it out. It's a weird story. For full coverage, check us out on CNET. I'm Roger Chang.
I'm Joni Salzman.
Thanks for listening. All right.
Thanks for joining us for the recording of the audio podcast. Joan, are you okay?
I'm all right.
You sure?
I just got back from Sundance and I caught a cold while I was up in the mountains.
Well, that'll happen. You want me to
sorry
grab
for my
you
coughing.
a cup of tea or something?
Yeah, it's tea.
Oh, okay. Let me know if you need anything, all right?
Thank you.
Anyways, if anybody's got any good, hey, Ryan's concerned about you too.
Oh,
I know.
thanks. I'm okay. It's just a cold. I'm
Yeah,
fine.
it's bitter cold here in New York today, guys, and it's
Yeah.
only getting worse. The air is dry as a bone.
It's like
so
15 degrees with wind chill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm from Columbus, and it's 1 and negative 23 with wind chill. There.
I'm from Buffalo, and they've been shutting down bars and trash collection. So
Yeah.
that says everything about the weather today.
Yeah.
All right, so go ahead, send in your comments and questions. We'd love the floor. Any thoughts you have about where Facebook is in this world at this point? How damned they are? How damned they aren't? How damned Apple definitely is. And what you think about what's going on with good old Tappy Boy. I'm stoked that I finally got to see it because I haven't seen the video of Tappy.
It's like a little robot arm. There's like a little sensor at the end that just sort of like kind of vibrates, like simulates a human touch. Yeah, it's a cool little robot. I think it came out like in 2005 or I mean it was a while back, and then I think around 2012 Huawei was granted access into the lab and decided to try to make off with it. Or part of it, which is
That's
just
ridiculous. It's so
it's crazy.
childish.
It's so crazy.
It's not even like a cool business espionage
they
kind
wanted
of.
this robot arm for themselves or some replica of it so badly that they were offering bonuses to, or allegedly offering bonuses to employees to like make off with it.
That's so wild and boring all at the same time.
See how excited those guys are about Tappy though. The video is kind of hilarious in its own way because. Like I think it was the profile of the investor or the inventor of Tappy, and he just seems so into it. Just a little robot. I saw it a few years back actually, and like I remember when I went to see it was behind big glass, and like the rep that showed me around, he's like, "Oh, that's Tappy. We can't talk about that anymore." I'm like, what? It was there's some legal stuff. I'm like, oh right.
That's
It was
Tappy. We can't talk about Tappy.
It's like hush tones.
Is Tappy he who must not be named?
Right. Exactly.
Okay, so taking a look at comments and questions. First off, I kind of want to floor something here myself, just because it's a thought that popped into my head. So yeah, Facebook is laced with problems and controversies right now. Would this one be as big a deal if it hadn't had so much precursor to it? Because yeah, it's a little shady, but they're still compensating someone to volunteer. In my perspective, tell me if I'm wrong on that one or if I'm off base on anything. And I'm kind of curious in the chat, if Facebook offered you money for your data, would you participate, and how much would it take?
I mean, I think there's definitely that's a valid argument that like if you're being compensated and you sign a consent, then there's kind of like this laissez-faire style argument that it's like, what's really wrong here? But I think that where it becomes more, it gets grayer is like the idea that you don't, if you're 13 years old, how much are you really consenting? And B, if they're not being completely transparent about what they're getting about you, even if they say in technological terms what they're going to be taking and getting from you, the data that they're going to be taking, how does anybody that's a normal human being know what root access actually means? Like they're not spelling out, we can read your text message. We can read, we can see all of your photos. We can look at, if they're not spelling that out in detail, which they didn't, then how much is it really consenting
And
if you don't know what you're
it's a
consenting
consent
to?
form, and I'm not clear on the details, but was the consent form in the form of something like you would see on your phone, or was it an actual physical form?
No, I think it was just something that you opted in on your phone.
Right.
Like you downloaded it. And
how many 13-year-olds are, one, gonna read through it or show it to their parents? They're like, I want the $20 because that's a lot of money for a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I think that's what kind of irks me the most is like if you're 18 and older, like you technically have good judgment, although I don't know, it's debatable, but like you're an adult, but for minors to offer this to minors who have clearly no judgment when it comes to this sort of stuff, especially when there's $20 at stake, that just seems wrong.
All right, let's take some more questions. This one's coming in from Ryan. With all of these issues with Facebook and privacy, is there ever any chance that people will finally boycott it? Or is it just ingrained into society now? I think he's got points on both sides.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's been plenty of delete Facebook movements, but they haven't really taken hold.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard for me to give up Facebook at this point. For me, it is often like the sole way that I connect with certain people
Yeah.
around the world. So
My perspective on this is that, like, I don't use Facebook anymore, but I haven't deleted it because Facebook is so integrated into how we communicate. Like when my brother was sick a couple months ago, the only way to be in touch with some of his friends to let them know, like, this is when you can visit him, was over Facebook Messenger because everybody's on Facebook.
yeah.
So like I'm counted as a monthly active user for Facebook, but I literally like almost never use the product. And so I wonder how much they know inside Facebook about whether people are sort of tiring on the whole business. But I mean, there's also WhatsApp and Instagram, and people still love WhatsApp and Instagram.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Instagram's going to be tough to give up for a lot of people.
But I think that this scandal won't be one that really riles up the masses because it was so limited to a small set of these sort of like research users. Like it wasn't everybody on Facebook having exposure to some sort of nefarious.
But it was primarily minors.
Well, I don't think it was primarily minors.
It was 13 to 35, so we don't really know the breakdown of the actual ones.
And I think they said that like only 5% were people that were minors.
Yeah.
So it was mostly people that were adults that were doing this app.
I mean, this definitely pales compared to like the Cambridge Analytica scandal, which had like everything you wanted, right? Like in terms of millions affecting elections. Like it was just sort of this massive thing. In relation, this is fairly small scale.
For those out there kind of curious how many people have actually already abandoned Facebook, more than a few in the chat have already kind of signed off on it. Go ahead and, keep shouting that out. I gave it up in November, December, maybe even earlier than that, I think. I still technically exist on there. I didn't delete it, but I disabled it, turned off any general notifications.
Yeah, that's how I am.
People still occasionally try to tag me and stuff.
But do you still use it for Messenger?
I do still use Messenger.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
honestly, it's the quickest and easiest way to talk to my mom.
Oh, yeah.
So
I use WhatsApp constantly. I'm always on WhatsApp because that's how I used to communicate with my family.
That one I haven't gotten on board with yet. I guess I need to like look into it.
Well,
to
that's
see
the
if it's
thing. Like, if you have a
possible-
messaging app, then the one that you the one that you have works. Then you usually don't use multiple. I don't
Right.
think. It just sort of it's one of those.
I use multiple, but only because different networks of friends and family use.
That's
different
it though. Like
Right.
I got
services.
jokers who still think text is the way to go, and I just want to slap them.
Wait, what? I love text.
I hate
I
text.
text constantly
Come on.
Yeah, it's exactly what I want to do. Pay extra for individual transactions as
You know what
opposed to
pays
just
for text
group-
messages anymore?
Yeah, you do.
too. BVG does.
Do you have a limited text message plan?
No, we pay for the unlimited text message plan
Oh, I see what you
as
mean.
opposed to just piggybacking on the data, which is already built in.
Yeah.
Well, but most plans just throw in limited text. You can't like get a plan with limited text messages anymore.
Nope.
So
He's
So-
not into it.
So
Anyways.
I did try to dig out that alleged consent form. I couldn't find anything
Right.
in my brief availability
Right.
to do the research. But here's a really good question from CMDR. What kind of consent agreements would actually hold up into litigation in this point, especially with all these minors possibly being involved with the Facebook data research?
Well, I would assume that this consent language was written by lawyers, and so
Yeah.
it was written specifically. It was written by lawyers specifically to avoid litigation rather than to be upfront with users. It was focused on avoiding lawsuits and not focused on being transparent with the people actually
and you
using
can
it.
still be within legal boundaries and also still be unclear.
Right. In fact,
That's the key. Yeah.
if you are within legal boundaries, you often are more unclear.
Yeah, because lawyers
written,
lawyers
yeah.
get paid a lot of money to do that. So
All right, moving on to some more questions and switching gears. Let's talk about Tappy a little bit. Storm King equates stealing Tappy's hand, or whatever the hell you want to call it, claw?
finger.
Finger? It's like
don't
stealing
know.
the mascot from an opposing team. Why would you do that?
Well, no, it's not an opposing team. That's the thing. Like Huawei needed T-Mobile to sell its phones in the U.S. in its stores, and the robot arm was part of this broader certification process that all these carriers have to make sure the phones work well on their network. And so it was less like stealing from the opposing team and stealing from what's a good analogy? Like I don't know, like stealing from like your local vendor. I don't know. I'm really terrible with analogies, but it's basically stealing with like you're stealing from an ally, not a rival, not a competitor. So it was even worse in a way.
Here's an interesting one to swing us back towards Facebook just for a hot second. Storm King says, is just having the Facebook app on your phone a problem? On my Note 5, I can't uninstall the app, which makes me suspicious. Shimul says you need to root your device and uninstall apps that come pre-packed. I'm kind of floored. I've never heard of Facebook being bloatware. Is that really a thing?
I think it might be with some OEMs. They might have like some sweetheart deals with Facebook. I'm not. I wasn't aware that the Note 5 was preloaded with Facebook. I know like a bunch of carrier apps are always preloaded, but I don't know if Facebook was one of them.
Yeah, same. I had no idea.
It makes sense though.
Yeah, they would buy their way into that. Okay, here's one from Timothy going back to T-Mobile Tappy. Would this T-Mobile issue help with the Sprint merger?
Oh, not really. It's one thing. It's a couple years old. Like T-Mobile itself had actually settled a civil suit with Huawei on this, and they ended up getting like $4.8 million for it. That original case, Huawei was found basically not guilty of, as a company being guilty. They basically blamed like one or two of these employees and called them rogue actors. It's come back because the Justice Department is making the case that it wasn't just these rogue actors, it was Huawei internally throughout the entire company that kind of pushed for this these kinds of actions. So in terms of like its impact on Sprint and T-Mobile, that's pretty negligible at this point.
Here's a really good existential crisis to consider from Tim. I really Tim, you've been killing it in the chat lately. Thank you so much for your contributions. If you had to give up one thing completely, what would it be? Facebook, Apple, or Google?
Yeah, there was a story.
Yeah, that was that happened last year, or the year before. Like 4 companies. Amazon was also in the mix. Yeah, as a company you'd want to give up, or you could give up.
I can't remember who's doing it, but there's a writer that's like in sequence trying to go through each one, like give up Amazon, give up Google, give up whatever. But sorry, but this doesn't answer your question, but she's the only one that I read was Amazon, and she included it to mean anything that's hosted by Amazon Web Services. And so she's like, I can't use the internet, like all of the internet.
That's impossible. I thought if it's just Amazon services,
right?
And even then, like, I'd find it pretty tough at this point with a kid. But I would say, I mean, for me, Facebook would be the first one I'd give up out of the...
Yeah, if I had to give up one, it would be Facebook because I've already mostly given it up.
Yeah, I got Apple products. I mean, I could easily move, I guess, out to PCs or Android devices, which I have. But I would say Facebook is probably the one I would have the least impact. Yeah. Like, would be the least disruptive to my life.
What about you, Brian?
Probably Apple. I still have a MacBook Pro from like 2011 or something like that, and it's hanging on by a thread. But I don't.
You're using a MacBook right now.
That's company contributed. I didn't pick this.
I know.
They give this to you. It's automatically issued. But as far as my own life, I'm going to distance myself from the job at this point. Yeah. If I am to make a choice, I could at this point. I don't have much else Apple in my house. I don't have an Apple TV. I don't have AirPlay anymore, anything. So if I just switched my laptop out, which it's well overdue for, obviously, that Apple would be pretty easy for me to give up. Plenty of alternatives. Not that but honestly, like, I could probably, I'm feeling fine without Facebook at this point too. So the only one I can't really is Google.
Yeah, I feel like Google's really got its
I'm
claws
very
in this.
ingrained. I live and die by my calendar. I've said it before. I'll say it again. If my calendar in the my Google Calendar doesn't set off an alert to brush my teeth in the morning, it ain't happening. So that's my stance.
Wow.
You should set an alert to brush your teeth.
Yeah, I really should.
You really should.
Hint, hint. All right, we got just enough time for a tiny little bit more of Q&A from you guys. Thanks again for joining us today. CMDR Trium says, I don't know if this theft is part of the reason Huawei's CEO is possibly being extradited to the U.S. from Canada. I have no insight on this one, but this sounds like some deep espionage crap.
No, so it's the CFO, who's also the daughter of the founder. She's currently being detained in Canada, and she is waiting to be extradited here in the U.S. That the charges were separate, so there were actually 2 different charges or 2 different acts that instigated the Justice Department charges, and one of them was Tappy. The other one was it's kind of a convoluted thing, but basically Huawei evaded U.S. sanctions to work with Iran and somehow involved U.S. banks in the scheme. And so the Justice Department has said that CFO was personally involved in the scheme, and so that's why they've requested for her to come to the U.S. and face charges.
Got it.
Yeah. It's a crazy story. I mean, just the sheer magnitude of stuff that these charges all allege.
I mean, not
it's
like
incredible.
movie of the week crazy, but op-ed in the New York Times crazy.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it could be like a Tom Clancy thriller, I guess.
No, there's no thriller element to
All
this
right.
whatsoever, Roger.
He's running off with a robot hand. Come on. All right.
That's a movie I want
You know
to
what?
see.
That
I
would
want to
make-
see a heist movie where they steal a. Wait, it's called Short Circuit. That already
Oh
happened.
yeah. I love that film.
We need to. Wait, aren't they rebooting that?
No, really.
They're rebooting everything. I can't imagine why not.
Probably. Ugh.
Everything.
All right. So before we call it a day, what is the price for your data? Roger Joan, how much for Facebook to buy you out?
Oh, well, like
Like a month? I don't know.
Whatever the
It'd be a
parameters
lot.
are for if you were in this research app and they approached you and said, name your price.
name my price, like $1 million. Give me $1 million a month, and then you can know
I mean,
everything about me.
I'm probably cheaper. I'd probably say like, well, if you could exclude my kid, because I try to keep my kid out of it. But if it's just me, like 10 grand, pretty cheap. 10 grand a month. Yeah, all right. I'll do it.
And what were they offering? 20 bucks?
20
$20.
bucks.
21. I am a cheap date, folks. Okay.
They've heard you, by the way. The offer is going out by mail now.
I'm not getting a check for the data they've already stolen.
Right.
I don't know what the point is. Like, they're not going
Right.
to start paying me now. They've
Right.
already got everything they need out of me.
Right. You're getting a ton of value from their service.
There you go.
Who can, what? You can't
And
put
those
a price on
and
that.
those relevant ads.
Oh, yeah. Everybody loves
targeted,
those
relevant
super relevant
ads.
ads.
You mean like the ones that they just pull from my Amazon browsing history?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
AdSense auto?
Yeah.
Ads are
Cookie
so
stealer.
bad. I don't know if you guys have to deal with it, but like as a woman using it, it's constantly for like yoga and like
Really?
leggings,
Oh.
like stuff. And I don't do yoga. I hate yoga. And I don't hate it as a concept. I'm just bad at it. So I don't want yoga and like lingerie ads where like it's just
No, I get mostly stupid geeky stuff. Like
yeah. I don't get stupid geeky stuff. I get stuff that's totally
suitcases.
inappropriate. For
I get
who
a
it
lot
is.
of like high-tech suitcases.
That's because you went to CES and you travel for part of your job.
That's true. I guess it's pretty relevant after all.
Yeah.
I don't.
But you
need the
don't like
suitcase.
even if it is relevant, you don't like those ads.
No, I don't.
Yeah, that's been the argument is that if it's highly targeted and relevant, then advertising won't be a nuisance. And I feel like that's not true. It's always a nuisance.
It might be for some people.
Yo, so dig this. I was on deathbed last week, right? I was deathly sick, and I was trying to find medicinal, like whatever drugs or medicine or whatever I need to do to fix myself using my phone.
Yeah.
I went on my laptop last night, and everything is just ads for like flu medicine.
Yeah.
Oh,
That didn't take much.
yeah.
Yeah. I'll also notice when I'm researching things for stories, technology for stories, like I'll notice I get tons and tons of advertisements for similar technology. Which is another reason why I think these targeted, highly relevant ads aren't actually targeted, because like the technology is kind of dumb. It doesn't understand that I'm not looking for this because I want it. I'm looking for it because I'm researching something.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know like people like Bridget and folks around here, they create secondary accounts
Yeah.
to pursue things on different social media for research purposes.
Yeah.
So it doesn't infiltrate their personal.
Yeah.
I used to do that too, and then I got lazy and I just
Yeah,
stopped.
that's a lot of work.
That's a lot of work.
It is.
I'm
So
pretty
now I
lazy.
just get irrelevant ads.
Yep. There you go.
First world problem incarnate. Okay, we are out of time. It's time to call it a day. We'll be back one more time tomorrow. Thanks everybody for joining us. Roger.
All right. The 359 is available on iTunes, TuneIn, Feedburner, Stitcher, Google Play Music, Google Podcast, the Amazon Echo, and of course, CNET.com. See y'all tomorrow.
Take care, folks.